You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
And welcome to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community. I'm, as always, your host, Ben Wolf. We're going to learn from our guest today a topic which is near and dear to my heart, especially in the fractional leadership community, which is how abundance mentality is key to growing a business. Before we get going, I do want to mention that for fractional executives and leaders out there who are some of this audience, we have an event coming up through the fractional leadership community, the Professional Association for Fractional Leaders, coming up in November on the 10 disciplines to maximize your energy. It's hosted by Rob Dubay, who is the co-founder of the 10 Disciplines organization, based on the book by Gino Wickman, outlined at the end of the EOS Life book, about 10 disciplines to maximize your energy. So members are able to join that. If you're already a member, great. If you're not yet a member and you're a fractional executive or part of a fractional executive firm or owner of a fractional executive firm, check out our website, fractionalleadership.io, and check out what it means to become a member or if that's a good fit for you. With that, I want to get into introducing our guest today. He is founder and president of Stealth Venture Labs, an e-commerce marketing, quote, anti-agency. He was the founder of Roost, ROOZT.com, which had a successful exit in 2014. He was knighted by the Italian royal family in 2020. You can find out more about him at stealthventurelabs.com, and that's venture, R-V-E-N-T-U-R, labs.com. And I give you Brent Freeman. Welcome, Brent.
The perpetual on mute. Thank you, Ben. Stoked to be here, brother. Really, really happy to chat today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Great to have you here. And I guess before we get into the substantive conversation, I want to introduce people to you. If you can give us a quick 2-minute background and history on kind of like where you came from, how you got here today, just a quick 2-minute background that kind of tees up, why we're going to be talking about abundance mentality today and like kind of where you came from.
Sure. So serial entrepreneur, was not the lemonade stand entrepreneur though, but just looked at the world in a very different way. And found myself into entrepreneurship as saying, it doesn't have to be like that. There's got to be a better way. And I grew up in the Bay Area, went to school in Los Angeles, studied abroad in Florence, Italy, and really discovered entrepreneurship through my path of reading. I read Howard Schultz's Pour Your Heart Into It, and then Malcolm Gladwell's, or Seth Godin rather, The Purple Cow at the time. And I was like, wow, there's other people out there that think like me about how we could use business to create impact. And then I just starting businesses at a young age, unsuccessfully, mind you, right? Failure
was
after
in
failure.
Italy or
no, I came back. I studied abroad in Italy, came back to my undergrad at USC in Los Angeles and joined the entrepreneur program, but wasn't one of the rich kids. And my family actually had gone bankrupt while I was in college. And so I was graduating with $250,000 of student loan debt, needed to pay it back. And I said, the best way to do that is by being an entrepreneur. I was right, but didn't realize how long it would take me and how many failures I'd have to kind of go through in order to kind of get to the other side of that. And
with
really,
student loan debt not being dischargeable in bankruptcy, it's it'll be there waiting for you whenever you're ready.
They'll be there waiting for you. They find you. But the abundance stuff came in because I actually went down the first half of my entrepreneurial career, if not even a little bit more. I really was operating from a scarcity mindset, how not to lose, how not to lose it all, and so in fear-based. And it really wasn't until I started to operate out of kind of an above the line in the love mentality or in the abundance mentality and in the surrender mentality, the manifesting world versus the man of fucking it up world, pardon the French, right? Above and below the line of both of those. I was very heavily operating out of scarcity. And what I found is that through my entrepreneurial journey is that the harder I grasped at sand or tried to create out of scarcity, the more my dreams got pushed away from me, like the opposite end of a magnet. And the more I pushed towards it, the more the farther they went. And it wasn't until that mentality switched, which I'm sure we'll kind of get into, but I've run my first business was a commodity import-export business. My second business was an online marketplace. My third business is now a digital agency growth marketing firm. And then I've helped co-found about 10 plus other companies, e-commerce businesses and other brands as kind of as co-founder. And so it has been quite the journey. And here I am. I'm 37, and I'm going on my 16th year of being an entrepreneur.
Nice. Well, yeah, I do appreciate you teeing that up. And before we get into the real topic today, I just got to ask you, what is the story of being knighted in Italy? How did that connect to your entrepreneurial journey to the extent it does? I don't know. Like, what's the
Yeah,
story there?
it's kind of a yes and. So over a decade ago, I dedicated my entrepreneurial path to saying, how do I use for-profit businesses to create social impact in the world? How do we embed cause into our cogs? And so as our business and profitability scale, so does our social impact, taking care of our team members, causes, all sorts of stuff, teaching entrepreneurship in inner cities of the United States. You name it, we've kind of done it. And so fast forward 2019, I got nominated to be knighted by the Italian royal family through a series of connections. The Italian royal family is no longer in power in Italy. They left power after World War II, became a parliamentary democracy. But the royal family kept on the tradition of knighting and daming handful of people every year. And what they do now is they're a philanthropic chivalrous house that helps causes and uses their power and their influence to support causes all around the world, philanthropic causes. And they
So
use
not
their
necessarily with a nexus to Italy.
yes, and in Italy and outside of Italy, it's all over the world, helping chivalrous causes around typically children's chivalrous causes. And they now use the knighting and daming. It's a 1,000-year-old house. It was the family that unified Italy in the 1800s into one country, where previously it was a series of provincial states. And they unified Italy into the country we know it to be today. And so they carried on this tradition, and I got nominated. And you go through a whole process of interviewing and this, and you have to be somebody who is dedicated to doing good in the world and have a kind of proven track record. And I was fortunate to have that. And I have Italian roots and heritage, and I live in Italy kind of 2 months out of the year now. And I was confirmed in the middle of a pandemic, 2020, found out sitting in my house under lockdown that I was going to be knighted. And so the ceremony was actually postponed. It comes up this December in New York.
In New York. Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. I guess the first thing I would say, talking about this topic, is as I said in the introduction, it's near and dear to my heart. The topic of abundance-mindedness, abundance mindset. It's really core to the fractional leadership organization. Every fractional leader, every fractional executive that joins that community, that professional association, applies, and they talk about our core values in the application, and we talk about it in the screening interview. And we've just been very clear that people who are always looking over their shoulder at their competitors and again, just living in that scarcity mindset is just not a fit with who we want to be and who we are as a community, as an organization. So it's just core to me. It's why I call the podcast Win-Win. Because looking to see how any engagement, any interaction, we can make a win-win for whoever's involved. So that's why I'm so interested in this. But I guess I would love to hear a little more details than what you said in the introduction to maybe how, what it looked like when you were living in that scarcity mindset, because I'm sure a lot of us can relate to it. And then how did that evolve, or how did abundance-mindedness, just walk us through, how did abundance-mindedness become so core to your entrepreneurial approach to business, or not just life but business?
So I love this topic because this is, I think, when you strip away everything, it breaks down to its like core root foundation, where I have gone wrong and gone right in my life in trying to create the life that I believe I was put here on earth to live and have. The abundance mindset isn't just, oh, think positive and everything's going to happen. The abundance mindset is a cellular level. I believe things are going to happen to me in a good way, and there is enough out there for all of us, that I don't need to hoard in a manner that creates scarcity or fear or anger or frustration. But for me, it didn't quite manifest in such black and white. The scarcity mindset manifested in actually a really strong desire to be successful, to break out of the financial burden that I was experiencing and I saw my family experience, to try to quote unquote make it so I could have some financial freedom. Not because money motivated me, but because I saw what happens when you don't have money and what that can create and bring. And so it wasn't like, oh, I'm so angry and I need to screw people over. It was more like, oh my God, I want this so bad. I want to create something so bad. I want to have my, not just financially, I want to have this vision for a marketplace for socially conscious brands. And I wanted to build it, and I wanted to see the reality of it. But what happened to me, I know this now, I didn't know this then, is that business you said in the intro successfully exited. Well, it exited. I wouldn't call it successful. Successful in learnings. It was not successful financially. We sold it, but for parts, and I lost a lot of money in it. And the only thing I was left with really was the learnings. And when I went back and looked at that venture and what went wrong there, it was I was operating out of such fear. And I was operating out of, like I said earlier, grasping at sand so hard, of desire, of wanting to create something, that I was so hyper-focused on the grasping at sand that I wasn't open to the universe, the market telling me like, oh, maybe if you just look over here, you're 3 feet from gold. And in that 3 feet from gold, that's where it is. If you were just open-minded, but I was so busy trying to create and do and build and do, I was just closed-minded. I can only do this. I have to focus, that I wasn't open to actually the signs that the universe was sending me, that I was literally adjacent to a gold mine. And I didn't stop to say, okay, let me get some white space and really kind of examine and take a step back and say, well, scarcity tells me I don't have it and creates separation between where I am today and what I'm trying to create. And that separation creates a feeling of lack. And that feeling of lack is actually what, if you go into the law of attraction terms, is what actually pushes it away from us further. No matter how hard I want to have that thing or create that thing, it's not a matter of desire, because what's happening, if we go back to Napoleon Hill and thoughts are things and thoughts become realities, the challenge with this is that it's not just thinking positively or setting goals and visions. It is putting the thought out there of I want this, but then the magic is when you feel the emotion now of what you're trying to create in the future, but don't wait to feel the emotion of what you are trying to create in the future to feel that emotion. What I was doing is I was saying, one day when I get there, when I raise the money, when I have a successful financial exit, when I, get to this, when we're just this big, when it was always a then and then and then, and it was like running full speed with a carrot in front of me. No matter how fast I ran, it pushed away. It was equidistant, far away, and sometimes even farther. And then the more I ran, the more exhausted I got. And I stopped believing in that, not just believing in the vision. I was feeling emotions of doubt, fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, right? Because I wasn't there, jealousy, my friends or people doing it around me. And what was happening is I was putting all of this visionary things out there, but I was feeling these low frequency emotions. And that's the taking the ends of two magnets and having it be polarity. And the harder I pushed against it, the harder it pushed away from me. And ultimately, when that business failed, and what I realized is that I needed to change the way that I felt now and today, not wait for an outcome, not wait for the money, not wait for any of these things or the perfect partner or spouse or whatever to feel fulfillment, wholeness, happiness, joy. But I could actually feel those now. And if I felt those emotions now and wasn't waiting for it in the future, I know that in the future it's going to happen because I'm already feeling those emotions. I'm not attaching my emotional happiness to something in the future. And now what I've done is I flipped the magnet around, and it's drawing towards me. And so this is kind of the more advanced version of scarcity versus abundance. And if we get into a little bit more of the scarcity mindset versus abundance, the scarcity pushes what you're trying to create further away from you. The abundance mindset says, if it's money, most people is, but some it's not. If it's money or the perfect, husband or wife or partner or whatever, doesn't matter. If I am in fear that I'll never get that, but I really want it, I'm actually pushing it away. That's in scarcity. If I can surrender to, I'm whole and I feel good being alone, or I feel joy or happiness or fulfillment or contentment in what I already have, but I still have these goals, I'm actually drawing it closer to me. The money thing is the most easy thing to count. Money is really funny. It's just paper we make up that we add value to. It's just ones and zeros in a bank account. And if we take the opinion that money is scarce, money's not scarce. Money's everywhere. It's being more and more created everywhere. But if we take the opinion that money is already mine and it's already out there, and that money is, there's so much money out there that everybody can create it and build wealth if they want to. And it's out there. And what would it feel like when I get there? And we just run an exercise. We say, all right, Ben, when you have $100 million sitting in the bank, whatever, $10 million, $1 million, 100,000 sitting in the bank, let's do a visualization exercise. Tell me the emotion that you would feel when you're there. And I ask people to drop in, close your eyes, and really visualize and feel in your body where you're feeling it. Well, I feel pride. I feel relief. I could exhale. I could pay off these bills. I could buy things for my family. I could get a nice car. I get a nice house, whatever it is. You drop into the feeling of the emotion somatically inside of your body and feel it now. Because your body doesn't know the difference of a future event versus now. And if you really truly feel it now, you are already one step on your path to achieving that. And that is where the abundance mindset comes in. There's enough people, there's enough business, there's enough clients, there's enough money, there's enough partners, there's enough opportunity out there that I have to trust in the universe and trust in the process and trust in the unknown a little bit, to surrender to not being able to control everything or leave myself a little bit open for serendipity to happen. But what happens is scarcity takes over because we don't drop into that emotion now. And so we get into the emotion of the amygdala firing, the reptilian brain, right? The fight, the flight, the cortisol, the stress, this, I want it so bad, the jealousy, all these negative emotions. And the more that we feel those emotions, the more that it pushes away from us. So this scarcity versus abundance mentality in my own life has been literally the story of my entrepreneurial career. And once I switched from feeling those negative emotions of fear, jealousy, and anger, anxiety, and all those things into like, I'm just going to do a visualization. I'm just going to feel this now. It's like everything started happening. And I stopped trying to control every little detail and grasp at sand. And I started having a little more faith in the universe, the faith in the market, and exhaling a little bit and leaving myself some white space to play the chess game, to see opportunities, to be open to listening to the market. That's when things started happening more and more towards what my dreams. So there's a lot in there that we could unpack, but in that full scarcity and mindset, it's really about what emotions are you feeling, and what end of the magnet are you attracting with.
Right. And it's really fascinating. I was trying to like piece together, because I don't know, I'm in some ways I'm more of an integrator or analytical brain than a visionary in some ways not. But so I was trying to like put everything you're saying into boxes and into a logical framework. And the way what I came to by the end of what you're saying, and tell me if this is right, is that the abundance mindset, really the way you're describing it, is that belief that there's more than enough for everyone, that there's plenty out there, that it's that it's there for us, for you, for me. And then the way of protecting that, because that's going to fall by the wayside of your fear without the emotional backup or the emotional protection or the emotional protection of that belief, of that faith, that's created by what you described about visualizing how would I feel if I had it, and just connecting to that feeling of all that abundance and all that good things that you're going to have in the future, but connect to that and feel it now. But the way I understood you to be saying is that that's a way of protecting that belief, because otherwise, I guess it wouldn't last. So it's a way of protecting it so that you could continue to have that belief in the face of, again, not yet having all that abundance.
Scarcity is there's not enough to go around, and I need to hoard, and I need to protect. And I have a really beautiful, wonderful human. I'm a mentor. His name's Alden Mills, and he was a former Navy SEAL commander, platoon commander twice over. And he then went on to found the Perfect Push-Up. And he's now a motivational speaker, and he's done a lot of really wonderful things. Alden describes the following. There's the line, your equator, and then there's above the line and there's below the line. And it's really simple. Above the line is love, below the line is fear. If we're operating out of a place of fear, we are creating things like anger and jealousy and frustration and scarcity. If we're operating in a place out of love for ourselves, for others, for what we're doing, for the universe, for opportunities, we're in a place of abundance and creation and elevated emotions. And so to answer your question in this, I think about it like that. Like when we're below the line, when we're in fear, we are operating out of a place there's not enough, and I need to hoard, I need to protect. Now, certainly there are times, like the first thing that comes to mind when I say hoard is my grandmother, who grew up in World War II in the Blitzkrieg in London. Rations of food and this and that, right? And so late in her life, even now when she moved, when she had moved to the States, her closet was filled with canned food and all that, because there was always a scarcity mindset of one day there will never be enough. And so I'm removing some of those traumatic experiences aside, because those are a little bit different of how to take those PTSD type experiences, those trauma-based experiences, and switch them into abundance. But when we go into like fear-based decisions of, I don't want to refer this to my competitor because I don't want them to get ahead. I don't want to, I'm afraid that I'm not going to close this sale. And if I don't close this sale, I'm going to go out of business, right? These are scarcity mindset items versus, because we're trying to control everything. And the truth is, as humans, we can't control everything. And the sooner we can realize it, the sooner we can start understanding how abundance works. There is a certain amount of magic of trusting in the market and trusting in the universe that needs to happen, of giving ourselves space and time to remove just space and time to either analyze the market, to get out of like really high stress and into a little bit more of a flow state so we can make better decisions. That helps us switch from scarcity into abundance. But when there's trauma there, especially in any way, shape, or form, it is a regular practice, because we have a brain that has a negative bias. And then negativity bias tells us, be afraid, be fearful, protect yourself. It doesn't tell us, the brain isn't set up for self-actualization. It's set up to avoid pain. Yeah. Right. So what happens is the scarcity mindset is kind of default, especially in our world.
Yeah.
And until we have proof that abundance starts to really work, actually it becomes harder for us to trust. And so we try to control. And the hardest thing to do, this is EOS speak, is let go of the vine, right? The hardest thing to do is run full speed into the dark and jump off to the cliff, hoping you're going to fly, hoping the parachute's going to open. But in abundance, for your listeners, for folks that are in scarcity and are saying, well, that's great. It's not just think positively. Like the tactical thing to get over from scarcity into abundance is to say, okay, what's one way I could take? Great, I'm in scarcity. Yep, you're validated to think the way you are. You have every reason to not trust or to whatever it is. Great, that's awesome. And what's one way we could reframe that? Let's just try for sake of an exercise. Great, that's your output. What is the 180-degree other way to say this? Oh, I'm not going to close the client. I'm not going to get in. The business is going to fail. And this is going to have a great. Okay, awesome. I understand that's your position. Let's reframe it. I am going to close the client. That would feel amazing. Here's what it could do for my business. And here's what that would then trigger. And I'd get more clients. Or you're right, I'm not going to close the client, but you know what? There are other clients coming down the line. And if I close that client, it wouldn't make space for the most ideal client that's coming down the pipe that I don't even know is about to be introduced. And Abundance is a practice, just like meditation or yoga or going to the gym or whatever it is, or religion. Abundance is a practice. It is not something that just comes naturally. It will become more and more natural over time, but it's something where we have to constantly catch ourselves like, oh, I'm in scarcity. I'm feeling fear. How do I switch it to love? Love is abundance. Abundance is a high frequency. How do I switch it over? How do I reframe it? Just that practice. Then you get into things along the lines of, how do I counterbalance the negativity bias? And for every negative thing that I feel, they say it's 3 to 4 things you need in positive. I need like 10, right? Mm-hmm. And then getting into the reframing or mantras around like, I'm not good enough, this is never gonna happen, or 2, I'm great, I'm capable, this is gonna work. I'm great, I'm capable, this is gonna work. And you just kind of repeat in that to train your brain to fire and wire neurons in a new way. So over time, like a muscle, you start to build that muscle memory and recognize when you're in that abundance, in that scarcity mindset, and how to get it over to abundance.
Yeah. It's hard, especially when people are starting, like when people don't have enough. They actually don't have enough right now of the things that they need, whatever, money for their house, their family, their kids, whatever it is that you don't know how you're going to make the month.
Yeah.
It really is it's a leap of faith to even want to do those exercises or do those imagination exercises, because, well, why would I think that there is more than enough out there? That's not what my experience tells me. So it's kind of a leap of faith, because, right. Well, like, I guess, I don't know if it comes to this, like, say like, well, you could just believe it because you want to believe it. Like, that's a better way to live with that mindset. Like, it's a happier way to live. So I could just choose to want to go in that direction and give it a chance.
Or to take inventory. Is what I'm doing. It's really simple. Is what I'm doing working? Is what I'm doing working? And it's a binary question. Yes or no? If no, why don't we try something different? Right. I think what happens is we get so stuck. By the time we're 35, our patterns, our default mode network is kind of like hardwired. And so neurologically, it becomes harder to shift and change. And so you have to, in order to change those patterns and behaviors and thought processes, you have to kind of open your mind. And there's different ways to do that. There's meditation, and there's activity, and there's psychedelic therapies, and there's a regular therapy. I mean, there's a whole myriad of things that can change the neurology of your brain in this. But it comes down to, is what I'm doing working? If no, how do I do something different? Some people, they get to that, I can't, I won't, I don't believe, I don't have resources, I don't have access, I don't have any of that stuff. In today's world, for a $10 investment a month on Audible, you can download every book on tape. I'm dyslexic, have ADD, can't read books, so I listen to them. But 10 years ago, I discovered listening on Audible, and I've listened to 400 or 500 books now, whereas I hadn't read a book in 10 years prior. So people have to kind of like push themselves and get into the growth mindset of, is what I'm doing working? And if not, then how do I make a change? And try something different. We think that it needs to be such a big effort, but creating new habits is just like, don't go to the gym if you haven't worked out. Just put your shoes next to the door. There, step 1. Do that for 10 days in a row. Then take your shoes and go outside and walk in your driveway. Do that for 10 days in a row. Right? And then slowly but surely, you're gonna be like, well, this is silly, I'm gonna go to the gym, right? And then all of a sudden, you've built like these compounding habits that you've stacked over time. I think step 1 for folks that are in it, I'm not discrediting or disvalidating what they've been through or the trauma they've gone through or what they've seen and the distrust. And it comes down to, you can't motivate people to change unless they want to change themselves and they're ready. And so if what they're doing isn't working, then it's time for change. And it doesn't need to be big change. Just experiment, try some things. Just humor yourself and saying, if I am pessimistic, by the way, they did studies on pessimists and optimists, which you can kind of tie to scarcity and abundance. And people who are pessimistic live on average 10 years, I forget the exact number, and on average about 10 years less than people who are optimistic. And this is because what happens when you're in pessimism or when you're in scarcity, you're in high stress, you're in high fear, and your body is in constant cortisol. Yeah. And when you're in constant cortisol release, your immune system shuts down. So you don't fight things better, and it leaves space for disease to come up, and you don't eat as healthy because it's not a time to, think about it, because you're in stress. When you're in abundance, you start, and you're optimistic that things can and will work out, even though you don't know how. Your body is more regulated. So there's all sorts of health benefits to this process, but it starts with that simple reframe. Actually, it starts with the catching of like, I'm feeling scarce, and I feel scarcity here.
Yeah, me too, by the way.
You? Is it here for you?
Yeah, right here in the stomach, right there.
So that for me is a signal to say, okay, I'm feeling scarcity. How do I create white space? The neuroscience behind this is high stress. We have different brain waves. We have beta brain waves, which is consciousness, low, medium, and high beta. Low is like this, we're having a conversation. Medium is like, oh, I'm going to be tested. Probably should pay attention. High beta is cortisol. Then you go to alpha, which is flow state. Then you have theta, which is kind of the hypnotic dream state. And then you have delta, which is asleep. We oftentimes don't get into theta very often, but that's your suggestible subconscious state where you can start to really change the way you think about things through your subconscious mind. When you're in high stress or in scarcity, typically you're in the highest of brainwaves, beta. And what happens is you get into, for me at least, you get into analysis paralysis. And I loop and I fragment and I go into these things and I can't solve it. And it builds up and I feel it here. And it's actually my signal to take a step back, to try to break, to pattern interrupt, to try to break with that and move into either an activity, to go for a walk, to go do something, to watch TV, something, to pattern interrupt, to give myself some white space so that when I come back, I can try to figure out either how to reframe it, what's good about it, what's joyful about it, what's another way to look at it, or what's another way to solve that problem. And it becomes, again, it's just a practice. The more you do it, the more it becomes bespoke.
Yeah. This is some awesome ideas here. And just in a few pathways, I guess, out of scarcity and fear mindset, which I appreciate you sharing. Also makes me think of as a famous statement in the Talmud that it was reminded of when you spoke about the polarity, or the when you use the magnet analogy. Reminded me of a statement in the Talmud that says that one who pursues anger runs away from him. Not anger, sorry. One who pursues honor runs away from him. And it's a similar concept when you're just so desperate for it that no one's giving it to you. And when I was starting off, also, like if you smell of desperation when you're trying to get clients or when you're trying to succeed, nobody wants to work with you. You want to work with a winner, not with somebody who's desperate.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. You put that in any aspect of your life, attracting a partner and a spouse or clients or employees, or, it's that is the scarcity energy. It's low vibration. It's below the line, and the hard part is when you're in that is how do you get into the abundance side? It is a tremendous amount of trust. I am not a guy that is like, oh, I live my life all the way in abundance and everything is happy, joy. It's like, no, the reality is that joy is a practice. Abundance is a practice. It takes investments in daily. And when our bodies and our minds go back to scarcity, which they always do, and we'll always have these triggers, it becomes the practice of how to reframe and how to consciously counterbalance that. And again, it's just the simple step is first you notice it's there. Notice in your body, notice what you're feeling, and then just humor yourself. What would be an abundant reframe of this? Try it. And then repeat that to yourself a bunch of times. And then the more you do that, the more you'll start to believe it, right? And then the more you start to believe it, you'll start to get proof that it works. And the more you get proof that it works, the more you'll do it. It'll start to compound on itself. But it's like a sprinter getting off a starting block. It's very inefficient at the beginning before you get into your gate.
Right. Yeah, it's awesome. It's great stuff. Look, Brent, I really, really appreciate you coming on. I'm glad we got to talk about this. Again, people can find out more about what you're up to at stealthventurelabs.com. That's venture, VENTUR, stealthventurelabs.com. Really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it. And everybody else, we'll see you on the other side. Thank you.
You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.